Hey everybody, welcome back to the Indie Hour. My name is Ash, and this is our show about independently published boutique and small press games that might not be getting enough attention. Every week, the GMG patrons will pick a new game, and we give it like a thorough review and highlight here on the Indie Hour. Go through what you need to play it, how it works, how the rules are. And before and after, we hang out and basically just do like a roundup, like a little extra content as we catch up on the week and what's been going on, and yeah, stuff happening behind the scenes at GMG. It's a little extra content for them. If this is airing on a Wednesday and you're watching this live on the GMG main channel on YouTube, then that's because it was recorded a week before, live with the patrons. You can see them all up there in the chat, humming away at each other. We're talking about summer beverages and mocktails just recently. That was the current discussion before we got live. And actually, this week's game has been picked by the patrons. They pick one every single week, and they will currently be picking and recording the new one as you're watching this live on YouTube. So if you're not a patron, you're watching this a week later. The patrons will watch it and, of course, select the game we're using. And this week's game is one of our patrons' own projects from the One Box Wargame Challenge. This is our own MALEV, who has written a game called Convict Combat. It's a microgame. ZINE style. It's available on itch as a downloadable game and uses miniatures basically inspired by the Cannon Fodder box set from Wargames Atlantic. If you haven't used Wargames Atlantic boxes, these are fantastic kits. They're basically the same quality styrene plastic as Games Workshop kits, and you get a variety of different poses and styles. These guys are supposed to be like space prisoners, but you can do them up as just sort of jumpsuit soldiers as well. You can see a variety of different poses and styles, and obviously you're going to get a ton of bits to play with as well on these cool frames. Everything from like space helmets to entrenching tools, backpacks, and they're all in these little zip-up jumpsuits. They've got helmeted heads, bear heads, just all kinds of stuff to get inspired by. And so he decided he was going to write a game around them called Convict Combat. Now, if you love, I don't know, what's your favorite movie like this? This is giving me like Pitch Black vibes, Chronicles of Riddick vibes, Lockout. If you haven't seen Lockout with Guy Pearce, there was a brief period where Guy Pearce really wanted to be an action star. And this is it, man. This is the most Guy Pearce action movie you could possibly see. I think it was supposed to like turn into a series and it just didn't. It's Escape from New York in space, basically. And then a little bit BAKI, so like the anime BAKI, where a guy goes to a prison in Arizona. An anime from Japan about a dude going to prison in Arizona to fight a bunch of other guys and become the most powerful fighter of all. And so this is the giant corporate sector is called Prison Space, PRZN Space, home to several penal planets and a massive floating maximum security prison space station that houses the dregs of the galaxy. Most every living being that knows about the corporate sector have no clue of its dreadful secrets. However, they're aware of the spectacular hit program Convict Combat, which is dutifully broadcast as far across the sovereignty as possible, aided by the massive communication satellites of the corporate sector. So a little bit, the Running Man movie, not TV, not the book, where you're trying to get out basically through different levels. And the same satellites which keep the rest of the galaxy out, jamming all attempts to understand what's going on in this clandestine slice of space. Convict Combat is a fan favorite, macabre broadcast of which the prison constables ensure flash across billions of picked feeds, featuring the eponymous convicts battling for survival within the depths of the brutal prison blocks. all of these I love you, MALEV, but I'm stumbling all over these vowel-free words that you've written. This transmission sends the galaxy a gory gladiatorial display to be enjoyed by all your friends and family. What's the prize for winning the contest? While becoming just another one of the corporate sector's most prized export commodities, a conscripted contadant for the Void Wars in the northern section of the galaxy. So basically, your prize if you get out of this thing is you become a super soldier. And yeah, this is again $3 on itch. You can pay what you want. And it's got that like miniatures agnostic, high replayability, solo play, multiplayer, roguelike design, and you can play on a 12-inch playing surface. So let's jump in and check out what you get. So first of all, you're going to get this rulebook. So ZINE scale rulebook, 64 pages. You're going to get all the tokens that have been designed as well for this. So a complete set of tokens for playing the game, and these are all printable, punchable. And if you've ever used bottle cap stickers before, they're a super easy way to make these like permanent. You can buy a sheet of like 100 bottle cap stickers, I think for like $10 on Amazon. And you just use a 1-inch hole punch and punch these things out and make your own tokens. I got a video that's like 11 years old now of me making infinity tokens on GMG. And you get some pre-generated cards, Convict Z and Convict Zero. And these are basically like your, rip and go cards for making your own dudes. So let's take a look at the rules themselves. Convict Combat is a solo miniature game inspired to use the Wargames Atlantic Cannon Fodder box set. So the idea here was this is from the One Box Wargame Challenge, as well as Great Helm, which was because MALEV overachieved. He did more than one box. So Great Helm is his current thing that he's working on. This is one of the other ones. They both use a single box from Wargames Atlantic, and you can get infinite play of that one box. It's a hobby game. It's designed to inspire and move the wheels of the mind and get you going, collecting, assembling, and painting, with the final goal to be able to play some games with the models. A lot of the time, the hobby projects can be really big, and we're ambitious people, but we miniature wargamers, it is that in mind that I have set to frame this game with only 5 miniatures being required. So 1 for your hero and 4 for everybody else. You need a few things. You need a 12 by 12 play space. So just a 1-foot square will get you what you need to play here. This is a little bit along the lines of what he did with Demon Ship. You want at least 2 to 3 pieces of terrain that completely block line of sight, so like like pillars or walls. And you want at least 2 to 3 pieces of terrain that completely block line of sight. Like that would be things like rubble and barricades, stuff you can hide behind. Most importantly, you need 5 miniatures, 1 for yourself and 4 for your enemies. And then you get your convict. You take the role of a convict, and the enemies that you face are the same. You're all in the same terrible spot and forced into the situation. You can customize and make your convict miniature distinct and awesome, very different from the enemies. Like you could give him goggles, your indoor Riddick goggles if you want, and a teacup. There is a great Heresy miniature of Riddick where he's holding a teacup. Heresy miniatures, I don't know if they're still around, but you can probably find it in the aftermarket. But it's a great Riddick miniature. Games of Convict Combat are meant to be played by yourself, using a handful of d6s and a minimum of 5 miniatures. You'll roll the dice, see what actions you and the other enemies are in the area can perform, making decisions based on the present situation and the actions available. So there is a bit of RNG in this game where you're going to get basically a pool of action dice, and some terms, certain actions won't be available to you. So it's designed to kind of create that fog of war feeling where you got to make the best out of what you have with what you've been given by the dice. And there's a simple AI system, obviously, for the bad guys. So game overview, set up a game. Prepare your 12 by 12 play area to your liking. Just put your terrain down however you like it. You want to have like some general like line of sight blocking between the 2 forces. Organize the dice that you're going to use for yourself and the enemies. You want 6 in your color and 8 for the enemies. That'll make it easier to distinguish who's who. Collect your miniatures that you're going to use. You'll need 1 model to represent yourself and at least 4 models to represent your enemy convicts. 1 additional model should have a special weapon to represent the plasma cannon pickup. And then set yourself up directly in the center of the play area. That play area, the enemy convicts, each touching a separate corner. So you're going to start in every 4 corners. And then you're ready to proceed to the first convict step of the game. So the game stages. You have the survival stage, the convalesce, survival stage 2, convalesce, survival stage 3, and then you win the game. So we see 3 rounds. The only objective in the game is to survive. That means being the only thing living in the area when all is said and done. If this is accomplished, then you progress to the next stage. If you survive and complete 3 stages, you can retire your convict. You're promoted to the service to fight in the Void Wars. Write your name down because you're a hero now. So basically, do you get out, get promoted, rescue the president's daughter, and then get back to Earth? If you've seen Lockout, you know what I'm talking about. And then end the game. Should you suffer a grisly end in the arena, the game will come to an end. It's also possible that you can win by surviving the stages. And that will also end the game. So, the game steps themselves. You have the convict step and the conflict step. Conviction dice, this is basically your stat bar for your health and also your action pool. They belong to you and are what you spend to perform actions. The number of dice you'll roll is equal to your convict's current conviction stat. And then a round overview, at the beginning of the convict step, you'll roll your conviction dice to find out what sort of actions unfold. These dice will give you the enemy convicts or actions to perform during the round as well. After all dice are allocated, you resolve enemy convict actions, then resolve actions for your convict. After resolving all your conviction dice, play proceeds to the conflict step, and you resolve any remaining actions with living enemy convicts. Once all actions have been resolved in the conflict step, play proceeds to the convict step once more, and a new round begins. Continue to play like this until you're the last remaining convict or you're dead. So basically, you go until you die. The conviction stat is really important. Thematically, it functions as your determination, aggression, malice, and will to survive. It's also an air of violence that hangs over the arena that lends to the action that takes place within. So think of this as like your Spartan rage bar in God of War. When you first suffer damage, your conviction will lower. If you're ever brought to 3 conviction, you'll become concussed. Damage suffered while concussed applies directly to your constitution stat. If your constitution stat is brought to 0, you are brutally stained and the game is over. So I love this. It's a little bit like if you ever played RPG called Rifts or the Palladium role-playing system, there was 2 types of basically damage things you had. You had your SDC and you had your hit points. SDC was your structural damage capacity. It's your ability to get bruised, get beat up, but then get off and dust yourself off again. So SDC was never permanent damage. It was the damage you could take and then it would replenish, basically like your shields in Halo. And then hit points was permanent damage. That's like your internal organs getting damaged, breaking bones, and it's the same kind of idea here. So you get concussed when you take damage to conviction, but you never go below 3 because you always get to act. And then once you're at 3 though, they're breaking through into your actual physical trauma, and your constitution starts to go down. And that's when you get to that, it goes to 0, you're dead. And a single attack can never apply damage to both your conviction and your constitution. So you can't blow through the guy's constitution all the way to the end. Increasing conviction. When you suffer damage and have your conviction lowered, the only way to regain it is to be aggressive and perform action. So you rage out like Kratos in God of War. When your conviction stat isn't at its max, each conviction die spent to perform actions during the conviction step will raise your conviction by 1 up to your stat's max. So again, your health bar or your shield bar, let's say in Halo, replenishes when you do things and get aggressive. And what else can be used for? It's used for melee attacks. When you perform the stab action, gather d6 equal to your conviction. At the time of the attack, each dice rolled is known as a hit dice, and the results of the dice will have different effects in the game, mostly by dealing damage when you stab people. All right, concentration. Concentration thematically is a representation of your awareness, focus, ability, and caution. Convicts perform the concentrate action to gain concentrate tokens, and these tokens can be spent through a number of things in the game, but most commonly they're used to add dice rolls when attacking and defending. So think of things like might points in Lord of the Rings. They're your ability to spend actions, through your action dice, through your conviction, to then gain bonuses to doing other certain actions. It's like a focus action, basically. And what it's used for: when you perform the shoot action, gather d6 equal to your concentration stat at the time of the attack and roll them. Each dice rolled is known as a hit dice, and the result of the dice will have a different effect in the game, mostly by dealing damage. And when you perform the concentration action, gather d6 equal to your concentration stat and roll them. So you don't use your reduced stat. When you concentrate, use your whole stat. And each roll of a 6 grants a single concentration token. Constitution thematically is representative of health, fitness, and conditioning, and your ability to weather attacks. All convicts in the game interact with Constitution stat in some way. So if we look back at this guy's stat bar here, right? His conviction's currently 4, right? Starts at 6. Concentration's 3. Constitution's 5 over here. And then the enemy convicts. All the convicts in the arena are just as emaciated and weak as you are. All enemy convicts have 1 profile and 1 stat. They have a constitution stat of 10. If an enemy accumulates a total of 10 damage, they're slain or removed from the play area. Enemy convicts can only heal by way of coming into contact with an item token, like stim injectors, to get them back into the game. All right, so the game rounds. Convict step breakdowns. First, the convicts go. Roll enemy conviction dice for all enemies in the arena. That forms our action dice pool. Organize conviction dice into 2 pools, 1 to 3s and 4s to 6s. The 1 to 3s go to enemy convicts. Enemy convicts activate and perform allocated actions. Perform actions with dice rolls of 4 to 6 for the player convict. Play then proceeds into the conflict step. So basically, the odds. So the low dice go to the enemy convicts, and the high dice go to you. Allocate just in the convict step. At the beginning of the convict step, first gather the dice from enemy convicts in the arena. These dice are going to be used to roll for the convict action table. Different enemies will be allocated different dice based on their condition. The more wounded they are, the less dice they'll be allocated to roll for actions. In a general, healthy enemies will attempt to perform 2 actions, and injured enemies will only perform 1. The dice rolled for enemy actions are D3. So allocate and roll 2d3 to convicts with constitution 5 or greater, and allocate 1d3 for convicts with a constitution of 4 or less. Concussed enemy convicts only roll d3 regardless of their health, and concussed enemy convicts with a constitution of 4 or less to only roll a d3. Once it's complete, collect and roll an amount of dice equal to your current conviction stat. These are your conviction dice. After rolling, organize the dice into 2 pools. Rolled results of 1, 2, or 3 are actions that form the enemy, and then 4 plus are yours. The conviction dice results of 1, 2, and 3 that form the enemy pool must then be allocated to enemies in the arena. And starting with the convict nearest to you and then moving to the next year, so basically out from the center, allocate conviction dice from the enemy pool in a descending order, starting with results of 3. Until every convict in the play area has been allocated a conviction dice, and the pool there has no conviction dice left to allocate. After enemy available dice from the enemy pool have been allocated, enemy convicts with conviction dice results will take turns activating. The convict nearest you activates first and performs action depending upon their allocated dice results. So conviction dice allocated will dynamically convert if the enemy convert can't do it. So basically, you never get stuck with dice on the enemies that like the AI gets stupid and bumps into a wall. You're going to be able to convert them into doing something else. After every enemy was allocated conviction dice, they have a chance to activate, and it's their time to use your 4 plus conviction dice results in the action. So basically, the wave comes, then you do stuff. And if there's no actions in the enemy pool, should you only roll conviction dice of 4 plus, awesome. You're moving at blazing speeds. Just go right to your action step. I actually really enjoy that. You could get lucky and just go. However, no actions in your pool. Should you only roll conviction dice of 3 or less, that's too bad. You're losing your nerve. You have to survive the round as a sitting duck. So there's like an equal chance, basically, of you getting to do nothing at all and your opponent's getting to do everything. Activating your convict. Convict dice results of 4 plus will generate a pool of actions that you can use for your convict. Each action on the following list costs a single dice. And then spend a die and then perform the actions to completion before choosing other action to resolve. So there's 6 actions. Attack, which is shoot or stab with a damage. Advance, move 3 inches, then shoot or stab, but must end their movement in the conspicuous state, which means you're able to be like in the open. Charge, move 5 inches in a straight line, and may stab if engaged, must end movement in the conspicuous state. Creep, move 2 inches and you become concealed. Concentrate, roll up to your concentration. For each 4 plus, get a concentrate token to a maximum of 3. And interact, gain the benefit of a carried item or interact with the environment. It's like pull a lever, use a stim pack, stuff like that. And then we have the actual conflict steps. So activating convicts and the conflict steps. This is what the bad guys are going to do before you get to go. So you perform their actions and then roll for explosions and death sentences, and then the round ends. The conviction dice roll at the beginning of the convict step let you players know what they're going to do. So 3 is concentrate or contextual action. So if you can reload or lose concussion. Sprint and creep, and then shoot and stab. So you're going to do those in order, right? So anybody with a 3 is going to do those 2. And if they've done them already, then they're going to end to sprint or creep. And if they're done that, they're going to go down to shoot or stab. And remember, some of those are going to contain sub-actions. So for instance, like sprint and creep might have extra things that are like built into them. I think sprint might mean charge. That might be a terminology thing. Maybe MALEV can tell us in the comments. Because creep is in here, but there's no sprint. So I'm assuming sprint means charge. And that's just a whatchamacallit, oh no, there's sprints in there, never mind. There's a new action just for them. Conspicuous and concealed concussed gain a concentrate token. Concussed enemies that perform this action will lose the concussed status but not gain a concentrate token. And if the enemy already has a concentrate token, they will dynamically convert the action to sprint or creep. So basically go down if you already have one. And then it's sprint action. Conspicuous enemies only move 5 towards the close item, token, convict, or terrain. Enemy convicts do not need to move in a straight line. If they go to cover, they get concealed. If they come into contact with an item token, they end their movement. If they end up engaging the convict, they get a free stab action. Okay, so it is basically a charge with a different name. But because he's calling it sprint so that they can go into, maybe change the name for charge. Because sprint, it does the same thing basically. They move 5 inches, but then they get to pick something up too. It's more dynamic than the player character version. Creep is basically the same as the character creep, and then shoot. You're gonna roll it out of shoot, and a successful hit, deal damage based on the weapon. And then stab, again, the melee version. And the dynamic is if you've already done one or you can't do them, you go down on the chain until you can find one that you can do that's the best for you. All right, resolving attacks. For your attacking another convict, you make a hit roll. Successful hit rolls will deal damage based on the attack's weapons used. All of them hit on 5+. So shoot, spit death with your ranged weapon. Roll hit dice equal to your current concentration stat on a 5. And then stab, same thing on a 5. Resolving enemy ones. Depending on the stage, they get more dangerous. So stage 1 enemies hit on 5s. 2 hit on 4s and have a constitution of 12. And 3 hit on 3s and have a constitution of 12 as well. That's fantastic. And you don't necessarily get better, but you can find items and stuff as you go through that might make you better. But they get more dangerous. And then your concentrate tokens. You can spend concentrate tokens one at a time after making hit rolls to modify the results of any dice that miss. Each concentrate one spent adds one to the rolled result. So if you want to roll nothing but 3s, then you can spend 2 concentrate tokens to take all of your hit rolls down to 3+. So again, a lot like might points in Lord of the Rings. If you forget to remove the concentrate token from the enemy convict when resolving a shoot action and the enemy successfully hits, you can't go back and spend that concentrate token. They keep it. You have to concentrate more next time. You can maintain a total of 3, including the red eye bonus. Enemy convicts may only ever have a single concentrate token. And then rolls a 6 and 1. They're crit and do an extra damage if you get a 6. Ones have emptied your clip and you have to reload before you can fire your weapon again. And then we got our stab actions. All stab attacks of a 6 are crits and heal extra damage. And ones are parried by the enemy. You must discard a concentrate token for every parry before spending them to modify your hit dice. If you don't have any, there's no additional effect. So basically the parries will like knock you off balance and get rid of your concentration dice. And then defending. You can reduce your damage by spending concentrate tokens to reduce the damage by an equal amount spent. So every damage point you take, you can spend a concentrate to get rid of them. Enemy convicts will always spend concentrate tokens to reduce if they can, and then being in the concealed state when dealt damage subtracts 2 from the total because you're hiding cover. And then when enemy convicts suffer damage, it always just reduces their constitution stat. You don't have to get through their conviction. Again, if your conviction drops to 3, you gain a stat, or you gain a concussed. If you do actions, you'll gain it back up again. But basically, you have this like regenerating shield through your conviction that you're going to be able to take damage off with. And your weapons, a lead lobber. It's a gun. Deal 2 damage when shooting, deals 1 damage when stabbing. Bayonet, plus 1 damage in melee. A plasma cannon deals 4 damage when shooting, deals 1 damage when stabbing, and then volatile, shoot rolls of 1 deal damage to the user because it blows up in your hands. The BFG, enemies convicts immediately die if they roll a 1 when shooting the plasma cannon. It's a special weapon that convicts pick up during the game. Doing so replaces their lead lobber. And then expansion weapons. Different weapons come into play when you expand the core experience. So if you can find things like a slug slinger, it's like a shotgun. It's accurate. You reroll one failed shoot hit dice when performing the shoot action. You can ban it as well. Blast backer. That's right. That's the shotgun because it has a spread. Deal 3 damage when shooting guys 3 inches away. Shred gun. Zred. I can't even pronounce that. Rapid fire. Roll 2 additional dice when performing a shoot action. And plentiful runs out of ammo only if 2 ones are rolled during a shoot action. And then Glocka and Blade. CQC does 2 damage when shooting at targets within 3, and then reroll filled stab hit dice performing a stab action. So that's your handgun and knife. Can't reroll, and of course things get unloaded. You can't use them until you load again. Our basic rules for line of sight: concealed your cover rule for taking off damage, and how you will hide. Some examples of like hiding. And then death sentence. The convicts all share an unfortunate thing in common with one another. That each of them is wearing an explosive collar that can be activated by the constable watching over the arena at a moment's notice. At the end of every conflict step, 2 things can occur. First, the constable activates a random spot in the arena to trigger the explosive collars, and they may sentence a convict to death. The play area is a soon-to-be constructed of 6 spaces that are 2 inches square, 6 rows and 6 columns. In order to randomize spacing games of CC, roll a d6 twice and reference the results by 1. The first result's the column, the second's the row, so basically you're making a grid. Place an explosive token in the center of the final space. This is the section of the arena that triggers the explosive collar on the convicts. If any convict is in the explosive space, they must spend a concentration token. Doing so grants them a free 1-inch move out of the sentence space, but they must end conspicuous. The explosive token remains in play until the end of the next conflict step, where it will move again. They move to a new square. Convicts that enter the explosive space during the next round, for any reason, will trigger the collars and have their heads explode. Handing out a death sentence. After explosions, only convicts may be sentenced to death. Convicts that did not move during the round will be sentenced to death. Place the death sentence token next to them. If multiple convicts did not move, randomly determine between them. If the death sentence convict does not perform both a move and an attack action next round, their heads will explode in the combat step before the constable chooses to another convict. I love this because it keeps you from camping. You have to be moving and fighting at all times, or the judge just decides they're going to kill you. And the rest of the rules. So this is our how to make your convicts. Each profile has basically a special rule for the entire run. So these are your different types. You have a violent and aggressive one, devious and red-eye drug addict, or convict Z, notes, loner, doesn't speak to anybody. And they'll have different convictions, concentrations, and constitutions. Convict X is an impatient and aggressive prison mate. And so they have an edge in close combat and stabbing attacks, but are less effective in shooting attacks. So their trait is impetuous. Reroll 1 failed stab action dice per hit dice. The convict Y is sharp-eyed. Reroll shoot dice. And then steadfast. Reroll conviction dice each step. So like they have like a flexed stat line. It's always 3, 4, 5, but it's divided amongst different things. So conviction 4, conviction 5, conviction 5, but then constitution 4, 3, and 5. Convict Z is obviously super tough. Has a lower concentration. Convalescence. So between each game stage, the convicts get a brief respite. Roll a d3 and choose one of the following. Either I'm getting better at this, your stats go up. +1 conviction or concentration, +2 constitution, or whatever doesn't kill me. It's effect. Subtract 1 from either conviction, concentration, or constitution, and then add 2 to another stat. So if you get like the idea that like, you get worse at one thing, but it makes you super good at something else. You daredevil out. And between stages, whenever you convalesce, you heal all damage and restore your constitution to its max. After convalescing, you lose any items that you were carrying. Basically, they strip you to nothing. And you always start the new stage with the lead lobber that you get assigned. And then your stat limits, all maxed out at 6. And then cool items and pickups. There's 3 items in the game represented by appropriately marked tokens. And interacting with them, and the result is a 5+, the convict picks up a plasma cannon. Any other results, a stimulant injector, which fully heals the convict. If the enemy convict is already at full health, the enemy token is discarded. So basically, like, the enemies will just dig through and throw them away. When you interact with them, on a 1 to 2, it's a stim injector. It restores either 2 constitution or 2 constitution or concentration. Red Eye used to gain a permanent concentrate token for the rest of the stage. And then Plasma Cannon immediately replaced the lead lobber with a Plasma Cannon. The Red Eye bit is definitely a Cowboy Bebop reference, and if it's not, I'm mad at you, MALEV. Cowboy Bebop the movie, by the way, not even the TV show. And then your limitations for how many you can use. And if you're already on drugs, if your convict is already the effects of Red Eye, then further rolls will be converted to the Stim Injector, just gives you +2/+2. And if you find a Plasma Cannon, then there it is. You grid train to set them up. And then you get expansion rules like crazy events, barbarians, demons, Xenoses, automated sentries, darkness and grenades, spawn crazy NPCs. This is all the extra stuff that you put in here. And the demon ship stuff is obviously totally available here by using the gun demons, blade demons, and frog demons, because why not? And then the Xenosprute, the big alien, some sentry guns, grenades, darkness, a plague outbreak, because then zombies, right? It's gonna have some zombies in the game. And then how to basically increase the amount of people playing and modify the game to play with more than one person, which I really enjoy. I'm really glad there's multiplayer rules in here. And then finally, playing in Constable mode. It's a different solo experience than the traditional mode from playing Convict Combat. In Constable mode, you take on the role of the horrible constable appointed to run the arena for these particular convicts. Though festooned with all manner of weapons and surveillance equipment, the fighting arena themselves are not really purpose-built, but rather just abandoned sections of the prison block. They're in such disrepair they can no longer support the lives of the prison mates. When playing in the game in Constable mode, you don't take control of any of the convicts, but instead watch and react to the actions that are unfolding in the arena. As the constable watching the arena in real time, putting on an entertaining show and maintaining high ratings is crucial. So when playing in Constable mode, the game is played as normal with a few changes. There's no playable character. The convict dice are rolled to refer to the constable dice. As the constable will have a lot more control of the action step in doing so, so that no death sentences occur during the conflict step. You're basically trying to make the action keep going so that you're doing a good job and maybe you get a raise. After rolling actions for the enemy convicts at the beginning of the convict step, choose between 3 and 6 dice and roll them. These are your constable dice, and as the constable, your results, you can spend them to perform actions. But just like conviction dice, the results of 1 to 3 are allocated to the enemy convicts in the arena, and the 4 to 6s are kept by you. And then the concept step, basically, you begin your step, roll to activate your enemy convicts, choose between 3 and 6 constable dice, because you don't necessarily want to give the convicts more actions, and then organize them into 2 sides of pools. And then you get to perform constable actions. And those are different. You can drop grenades, you can bring in automated sentries, you can make a death sentence roll, and you can give it NPC in action. So if you drop in an NPC like the aliens and the Xenos and the demons and stuff, you get to do them something. And then unspent constable dice will have the convicts actually do stuff with them. So 4 to convert to a shoot stab action, 5 convert to a sprint creep action, and 6 convert to a concentrate action. And then you're trying to push people through. The Constable, you're always on the lookout and interested to find a violent superstar that you can prop up and sponsor. When playing the game in console mode, when any convict becomes the victor, you must then follow that convict's journey for the rest of the game, doing your best to keep them alive while maintaining and entertaining as normal. So whoever survives the first level, basically, becomes the person you're trying to keep going through the rest of it. And you get your little ratings point sheet. When a convict is so basically what your TV ratings are and what your final score is. And then convict identification. Even though these luckless souls are trapped, they have come from somewhere and they have stories to tell, undoubtedly. So you get to roll the processing and identification roll. In order to find out the identification number of your convict, gather a traditional set of RPG dice, so like the polyhedral dice set, and roll them in descending order. So you do your D20, your D12, your D10, your D8, your D6, and your D4. So you roll one of every dice, and it's going to show you the sector you're arrested in, the amount of years you were originally sentenced for, the block of the prison you come from, the sub-block you come from, the classic crime you committed, and how many repeat offenses you have. So like how it's written, basically. So let's say you're going to get to those tables. Oh, sorry, we get weapon traits and stuff too. Additional player character traits. So these are like the customizable things for your guys if you want to make new traits. Become assassins. And then NPC traits for all of the weird aliens and stuff too. I guess those tables aren't necessarily in here yet. So how it's written: sector number / city block - block number, capital B, sub block, lowercase. So I guess these tables aren't done yet because they're not in here, but I want to see those tables for the convict identification. Okay, so you're from sector. Oh, I see. Sector 19 / let's say 9, city number 7 -6, your block number. Oh, so it's just a serial number. That makes sense. Repeat number of offenses. So your processing identification roll is just a serial number. Okay, there's no tables to look on. I thought there was gonna be names and stuff like that, but it's just you generate this like serial number for your dude, and that's your name. That's really funny. And that's it. So yeah, other additional things like traits like having power armor or being stealthy. These are all the additional things that you can like give your characters if you want to do some customization. And that's it. Convict Combat by MALEV, a single box war game. So what do I think? I think this is a great example of what you can do when you're inspired. One of my favorite things in game design is working from limitations. There's a thing that, people say in cooking that like limitations bring out the most creativity. You open your fridge and whatever you have in your fridge is what you're going to make dinner with. The same goes in game design. You can have a really interesting experience out of a limited amount of stuff. And sometimes, again, this one box war game challenge is a great example of this. Giving yourself, well, I've only got these parts to work from is a great space to start writing from, because you don't go too far. You don't overdo what the assignment's going to be, and you don't get lost in details if you've only got X or Y or Z things on a frame. I love this using the Wargames Atlantic miniatures, because obviously these frames are cheap, they're readily available, and you can get a lot of game out of a little bit of stuff. So that's our look at Convict Combat. So like I said, it's only $3 on itch. You can pay what you want as well if you want to donate some stuff, and you get in on trying out this lovely little zine game, which I think is well worth doing if you want a kit bash idea, and again, a great little multiplayer if you want to play it multiplayer, and in a small compact space if you just want to do a little hobby project. This is the kind of thing that's perfect for those like Inquisimunda #28 designers who just like making a few miniatures. And you could reskin this as any kind of level escape game, whether you want it to be like getting away from Raccoon City and there's weird, T-virus guys, or a Resident Evil 4 thing where you're trying to escape a village, Resident Evil Village thing where you're trying to escape a village. Tons of options here for doing this, and the general idea of being one against many and the activation system, I think, is pretty inspired. So lots of obviously like room to give him feedback. MALEV is super active, of course, on the GMG Patreon, in his own Discord, on all the Black Site Discords. and on his own Twitch stream. So you can go check him out on the website. It'll all be linked in the video description. And we will, of course, be back next week with another Indie Hour. Now, if you're on the GMG main channel watching this, please go subscribe to the 4 new sub channels. We've already proven that this is what the algorithm wants, is to divide up the massive array of different topics and subjects on GMG into separate things, so that they can be more easily parsed, basically, by the AI. And in the last week, the Inside Tabletop alone, even though it had like 500 subscribers when it started off, got something like 25 or 30,000 views just naturally through the recommendation process. We were able to monetize it in the first week. So trying to get the GMG Games Workshop channel monetized, which just means watch hours, really. The subscriber count's already over 1,000 probably when you guys see this. It's just about people going and watching the content that gets posted. That's where all the GW reviews are going to be. The indie stuff's going to be here on the main channel. The Games Workshop stuff will be over there. So go subscribe to that one. And then, of course, we've also got Throwback Thursday, where we get to see old and out-of-print games. And those are some fan favorites. So we're going to have, I think, 3 episodes a week right now, because we're re-airing some of the classics that are like buried by the algorithm. There's like 4,000 GMG videos, and I think something like 300 of them are old out of production games, and like classic retro and vintage games, classic retro and vintage reviews. I'm going to be doing new ones of those, and I've got like 3 separate series planned already for bringing back some old classics, and that's it. So yeah, jump on the Patreon if you want to suggest our next game. Patrons get to nominate games in the chat. We get to vote on them every single week, and we bring a new game to you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Kudos to MALEV for running the 1-box Wargame Challenge and for it being sponsored by Wargames Atlantic. Great hobby supporters, community people that they are. And thanks for watching here. We'll see you next time for more Indie Hour. I'm Ash.